trying to
get on camera. We are on Facebook Live and Blog Talk Radio, so you will hear us jockeying back and forth between the two. We are so glad to talk with you today. We're going to talk about something that we mention in every show, but we have not discussed fully. So Christina came up with this idea. We think it's a very good one. And what it is a discussion on the ego child's mind, so you understand it fully, that you understand some of the things that the child said that the adult may still be saying, and that you might want to change. We have some ideas about all that. So
yeah, we just made it trickier and more sophisticated as adults, but it's the same silly little childish behavior.
That's right. That is absolutely right. So Christina asked me to start with what the ego child's mind is and what the purpose is. I made some notes, so here we go. The ego child's mind is simply the mind of the child you were. I'm going to ask Christina to edit me as we go because she's my translator. And not only is she my translator, she knows this work as much as I do. And sometimes I get things a little too complicated. I have done that my whole life, so here we go. Okay, the ego child's mind is simply the mind of the child you were. It exists in every adult. It is most easily understood in relative terms because you are two minds. You are the egoic child's mind that is born about the same time the ego is, at 18 months. We'll discuss that in a minute. And you are the highest self-mind. Well, hello, Lisa. I'm so glad to see you. And you are the highest self-mind. These are two distinct minds. The mind that is open, receptive to God, and by the way, channeling that is the highest self-mind. But I want to put on the table the word channeling because everybody goes, happy Sunday to you too, dear. Because what's going on is people want to shroud channeling in all sorts of mysticism. Let me tell you, God is all you are. But God appears to us, according to what we believe in our minds, as the absence of itself or as the fullness of itself, depending on whether you're an ego child's mind or whether you're the highest self. You're channeling one or the other. Good morning, Kat. So the whole point of what I'm saying is there are two very distinctive minds. They both exist in you. And our spiritual journey is to go from the ego child's mind to the highest self mind. Now, the enlightened mind, the mind of your highest self, is the developed whole. The egoic child's mind is the undeveloped whole. In other words, it contains all your still yet to be developed potential. The egoic child's mind forms when the ego is created, we've said, about 18 months old. Before that time, though, you are a little sponge because you're absorbing everything. You're a little sponge of now. And what I mean by that is you have only one time frame, and that is right now, before your ego is formed. The ego is actually formed because enough painful experiences have happened. So the ego child's mind ego forms to protect you, so it looks ahead to see if anything is like what has hurt you in the past. Okay. Now, because all time is now right now, the issue that usually comes out of this period of time is whatever you're experiencing will last forever. It is that belief. Whatever you're experiencing right then will last forever. This is what the child believes. And it follows many of us throughout our lives unless it is addressed and the highest self takes over. But this is also why many of us avoid our feelings, because we have an issue in the past that everything's going to last forever. It's not. Emotions hit us like a wave. We ride them. They go away. All right? Nothing lasts forever. But the ego child's mind, which you learn before 18 months old, maybe before 18 years old too, but 18 months old, is that it's going to last forever. And that's what we believe until we see it does not. I also want to address that everybody doesn't come from a bad home.
Yeah.
I am saying, however, that this is the way every single child on the planet interprets its circumstances. It doesn't get changed on time. It doesn't get fed on time. It's uncomfortable for whatever reason. The mother yells, the father complains. Whatever's going on, the child is interpreting these circumstances. By the way, this is the important note, relative to itself, because everything in the child's mind is relative to itself. So the purpose of the ego child's mind when you are a child is that it is a survival mechanism. It makes sense of your world if you are to survive intact. Your issues that you currently complain about, or that you are aware of, or by the way, might still not be aware of, are the creative aspect of the ego child's mind. That's good news. You survived. But you have manipulated and interpreted yourself, people and their treatment of you, circumstances, God, and your philosophy of living based on the egoic child's mind and what it believed and felt in order to survive. Many times, though, we have interpreted this world negatively and wrongly because it has been all relative to us. The father who is stressed about money is not looking at you and blaming you as the financial burden. It isn't your fault that your mother doesn't enjoy motherhood. But of course, we think if we had just been a better child, she would have. It's not true. Many times, we create even a fantasy world to cope. We unconsciously decide not to see things as they really are. We coat reality with a nice misty haze, and we all look better. That's not good. Because when we grow up, if we're still using these ego child mind devices, this keeps us in the survival mode, and you're either surviving or you're creating. You're creating the life you want. If you're still trying to survive and use this energy, hello, Celine. If you're still trying to survive and use this survival energy and all your devices for that, you're going to miss the boat because you're always going to be disappointed because Spirit wants you to do something else, you know? Okay. But when the egoic child's mind actually serves a very important purpose when you are the adult you are. Your issues and patterns that you become aware of as an adult serve to thrust you into a better life if you will learn and grow from them. It propels you to acknowledge your issues and patterns, to look at them in the light of day, and at last deconstruct them piece by piece. As it is deconstructed, an image is revealed just like a painting that has been painted over. I saw something on television this week I just loved. Christina and I were talking. I can't remember the name of that show.
It was probably Mysteries at the Museum.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Mysteries at the Museum.
Yeah.
And you have the television on. I'm not listening to every word, but the story is true. So they have this painting that's a still life. And the still life doesn't have a name on it. And they had it hanging on the wall in this museum for a really long time. And then they threw it in the basement because it was a nice painting, obviously painted by somebody who knew what they were doing, but didn't have a name on it. Now, with the latest technologies, they can laser the painting to see if there's anything under the painting. So somebody got the idea to do this with this painting that was in the basement, right? And they saw two pugilists down there. In other words, it's a painting of two men boxing or fighting or something. And they recognized it immediately. It only came from one Dutch school, and it was very clearly Van Gogh. It was very clearly Van Gogh, who went to that school. And Van Gogh, they said, was too poor to afford another canvas in the school. So he just painted over this incredibly valuable piece with a still life. Never signed it. These were all exercises in his school. But it revealed something priceless. Now, as the ego child's mind is deconstructed, you reveal something priceless too. Your authentic self. What you have hidden away to protect it. That's what always is revealed, and it's wonderful. One more story, and then I'm going to turn all this over to Christina.
Not all.
I'm going to shut up. Christina said, write something in the beginning about this, and of course, she gets a diatribe, so sorry about that.
Well, I knew you'd be able to explain it very well and in detail.
I don't know about that, but anyway, in detail is probably true. So another thing that I wanted to put on the table, she's heard this story a million times, I use it a lot, but Michelangelo said that with these fantastic statues, these huge marble statues, like David, he said they were in the marble. And his job as the sculptor was simply to chip away at what wasn't needed to reveal the statue. Now, I've got to tell you, I just don't know a better example of revealing the authentic self. Yeah. These things were used, these devices that cover us up and disguise us, were used by the ego child's mind. And we don't need to do that anymore.
And I think that both of those stories illustrate how it's important that we don't just assume that the ego child's mind is bad and label it and, I don't want that. This is part of our spiritual journey. It serves a purpose for us to go on this process.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Ken.
All right, so we were going to give you some examples of what a child's behavior would be, and then, give you kind of a funny look at what it would look like as the egoic child's mind in your adult life. Now, hoping that some of these examples will stick with you, and then tomorrow as you're going through your day, you go, I'm doing that right now. Let me look at this. So one of the things we were thinking about was, like when you have kids on a playground, and then one kid is like, the insulting little bully and comes up and says, "You're ugly." And then the very infamous comeback every kid knows at that age is, "I know you are, but what am I?" So as an adult, when the ECM pops up, that can look like defensiveness. And we're defensive when we fear what the other person is saying about us is true, but we're not ready to admit that to ourselves. And Martha's going to give us an example of what
I had a real good example of
looks
this.
like.
My husband and I had a dear person that helped us around the house for a while. We liked him. We really did. We did not want to fire him. We didn't fire him. It was so funny because we liked him so much we didn't realize the devastation he was causing. He killed our grass. He killed most plants. A friend gave me a beautiful rose bush. He planted it upside down.
This sounds like everything you want in a good gardener.
Everything you want in a good gardener. I mean, it was just horrible. I drove in the driveway, I kept looking at this rose bush going, what is wrong with this rose bush? Something's not right. I realized he planted it upside down. For about 8 months after this incident I'm about to tell you about, we found our tools everywhere. I mean, they were in the ivy, they were under the grass, they were God knows where under the pine straw. The things that we also use, you know, all of our spades and hoes and you know, things like that. So I tried to talk to him about this in the nicest way. I promise, in the nicest way. Well, he got very angry and left in a huff. I mean, he said, "Oh, how dare we criticize the way he does things," and he left. Now, come to find out that this has happened over and over and over again to this poor man. But instead of addressing the issues and changing his behavior and becoming more valuable, not as a human being, because all human beings are valuable, but as valuable
as a gardener.
As a gardener.
That's what he wanted to do.
If that's what he's wanted to do. He might have looked at himself and changed his behavior, but instead he got angry and left,
yes.
which is what he always does.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good example of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you catch yourself being defensive, just realize that's what you're doing. You're shutting the door. You're shutting the door to progress and to change and
to learning anything.
To learning, yeah, and improving yourself. So
Yeah.
if you catch yourself doing that, take a moment, go, oh, okay, let me look at this. Why am I being so defensive here?
Yeah.
And learn something from it.
We have to admit our defensiveness instead of indulging in it. I mean, I think it's really important when we wake up, we go, oh, I'm being defensive. You know, we may still do it, but it's really important to realize that you're doing it, and you have a choice to do it or not do it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And when we were talking about this the other day, we were talking about, you know, in another show, I think we're talking about reaction versus choice, and that comes into play here. The child is just reacting to its emotions and the circumstances and the issues being triggered, whereas the adult is making a choice. I'm going to choose to change my behavior. I'm going to choose to learn. I'm going to choose to grow.
Mm-hmm. And there's an element of that, of awareness. I mean, you got to be aware of what you're doing, you see. And a lot of us would rather not.
Yes.
Be aware of that.
Yeah, as my sister says sometimes, it's hard adulting. That's what we call it. Adulting. It can be hard adulting. Sometimes
I like that.
It's brutal to look at yourself and go, yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah. I'm doing that. Sure am. You know, I have the dearest class of which Christina is a part. We've all been together for many, 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 many years. They're fabulous healers. They're all on the website, by the way, including Christina, on marthaburgess.net. I'm sorry, marthaburgessnovak.net. And I was just going to say, this is so funny, because when we first started this class, everybody was very reluctant to talk about their issues. These days, we've been together so long, it's like, oh, I have that. Let me tell you about my example. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so funny how in the beginning you are like so ashamed and you're like, oh, I'm just fearful of like people seeing the real me and what will they think. And then you just, the more you reveal, the more you realize we are all the same.
Yeah, we are. We have all the same issues.
Yes.
And we can lose them
and
do something else with it.
Yeah.
You know? We're both poster childs for this work.
Yes.
Children, poster childs.
Poster
children for this
childs.
work. Poster childs.
Grammar has gone out the window this morning.
So, you know, I didn't have my second cup of tea, as you will notice. We barely got on the radio in time.
Yeah, it was quite a rush this morning of craziness.
All right.
Okay, so another thing you often see children do is, you know, the thing where they put their fingers in their ears and they're like, la, 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 I can't hear you. Me and my sister used to do that as children. And so, like, as an adult, this could be, the equivalent could be avoidance. You just don't want to hear or you don't want to see what is right in front of you. So let's say you're not feeling quite right. You've got some aches and pains. Your body is telling you something's up. But instead of calling the doctor and making an appointment and finding out the facts, finding out what it is you need to deal with, you know, maybe nothing, maybe something, you avoid that. You don't want to hear it, you don't want to see it, you don't want to look at it. So by avoiding it, then you create anxiety, you know, and then it becomes layered with all these emotions of guilt and shame, and I should have called, and why am I not calling, and then that anxiety just builds, and it makes you feel even worse than what you started with.
And the, you know, we're talking energy here. So the anxiety that you have about all that really turns into regret in the end if you haven't done anything. I mean, that's what it is. So, you know, the whole point is to not be avoidant.
Yeah, and so, the adult solution, you catch yourself doing that, avoiding making a phone call, avoiding making an appointment, avoiding doing something. The adult solution is sit down and do it. Make the appointment. Go get the facts. See what you have to deal with. Mm-hmm. And all of these things we're talking about when the ECM jumps in is what precedes it is a fear. Mm-hmm. A fear of what I might find out, a fear that I'll be rejected, a fear I'll be abandoned. That's the thing that you're like sliding right over. You might not even notice it. Be very unconscious that you're having this fear, and then the egoic child mind reacts to that fear, and suddenly you're in that space of that energy of not being the adult and not dealing with what you have to deal with.
I think you're absolutely right. I also think that avoidance oftentimes comes from our not knowing yet, and this is one of the, I think, real gifts of mm-hmm. consciousness, is not knowing yet that everything is good, that everything works for our good.
Yeah.
If everything works for our good, then stop being afraid of going to the doctor. The doctor may find something. And if so, he's finding it early, she's finding it early, mm-hmm. and you all can deal with it, and everything is good. But if we avoid, that's feeding our issue of nobody cares about me, God doesn't care about me, everything's bad. Everything is going to take me down, and I never get what I want. But come on, guys, we got to get those things off so we can see. We talked about revealing who you are as the authentic self, but the authentic self actually believes that everything works for your good. Wow. Yeah, that's who you really are.
Yeah, and it's time we stop running from our feelings and hiding from our feelings and labeling our feelings as something bad, because our feelings are part of the spiritual journey. I think years ago you called them signposts. Mm-hmm. They're there to direct us. Mm-hmm. Let us know there's something here that needs to be addressed. There's something here that needs to be explored or looked at. They're there to serve a purpose, and it is working for our best and highest good. It's when we avoid and suppress and all of that, we make it harder, and that's when we create the problems.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Okay, so another child behavior is children are really not the best liars. They're learning to lie, often very transparent. You hear the famous, the dog ate my homework. What teacher is going to believe that? Mm-hmm. I actually, as a child, I don't think I've told you this story, but I told the most ridiculous lie one time.
Oh, I love it. What?
My mother, she must have been like, what? So when I was very young, I must have been in elementary school, and I really wanted to shave my legs. I had dark hair, and it was very embarrassing in PE class, and some of the other girls were more mature, and they were already shaving their legs, and I just wanted to do this so badly. And my mother she didn't think I was old enough or responsible enough to do it, and she was worried I was going to cut myself all up, and so she was like, no, I don't think we're ready to do that yet. And so I
love the we, don't know that.
We're not ready for this quite yet. And so I remember we went away to visit my aunt and uncle and cousins in North Carolina, and for some reason, I don't know if it was the influence of my older cousin and wanting to be cool like them, but I got a wild hair, and when I took a shower that night, a bath, I shaved my legs without permission. I just went there and did it. And I did a horrible job, by the way, because no one had ever taught me how to do this. And so that night, as I'm going to bed, got my nightgown on, and I'm trying to pull it down as far as I can as Mom's putting me to bed so she can't see my legs have been shaved. And she's like patting me, and she's like, Christina, what happened to the hair on your legs? And so in my brilliant child mind, the lie I came up with, I was like, well, Mom, I prayed and prayed and prayed and asked God to take that hair away, and He did.
I love that.
And so,
so what could she say?
Yeah, she was just like, okay, where do we go from here? So, that's the kind of lies we tell as children. Just
I love that.
So ridiculous and unbelievable.
You're actually making me think of another story that I didn't do, but my cousin, who is now passed, but he was like my brother, did. He, when he was a little kid, he pulled the hose in from the garden and watered all the chintz furniture in the sunroom. And Uncle Bill at some point woke up and came down and everything was soaked and ruined, And he said, "What possessed you, Will? What in the world possessed you to do this?" And Will looked and was very sincere, and he said, "God told me to do it." It was like a story. And my uncle said, "Okay." What could he say?
If you're going to get caught in a lie, you need to pull in the highest power possible to back you up.
Right. There is, somehow the children are brilliant. There is just no arguing with that. All right. That was hilarious.
But, as adults, we get a little more sophisticated and tricky with our lies.
Yeah.
You could lie in a situation like maybe someone invites you to a party, a dinner party, and you're uncomfortable. Like, some people have social anxiety and they don't necessarily feel comfortable going to a party and having to engage with people that they don't know. So they'll come up with a little lie. Well, I'm not feeling well. I'm getting a cold. I'm feeling a little sick. And so that seems like an acceptable excuse to get out of the situation. And again, preceded by fear. They're fearful of the situation, so the egoic child mind says, "Let me lie and get out of this."
Yeah.
And then there's those more complicated lies, like when we lie to ourselves.
That's right.
And you had a great example.
Well, I have an example of that. I have a friend that, where is that? Okay. There is a man I know who indulges his daughter because he's actually, in truth, he came from what he perceives as a horrific background. I don't know whether it was horrific or not, but I go with him because he perceives it as a horrific problem. And he indulges, unbelievably so. I mean, sometimes even feeding his daughter, who is an adult, because he's saving himself over and over again. He's saving himself over and over again. I pointed this out to him. Other people have pointed this out to him. And he won't stop. He doesn't want to stop. Now, his survival mechanism, one of them, is a closet narcissism. And a closet narcissism tells you, big old lie, which is you are always right and you're nothing if you're not. You have no value at all if you're not right. So he has layered lie after lie after lie after lie on this behavior of these reasons that he's doing this. And he doesn't want to look and see it. He's made his daughter an emotional cripple, and he enjoys enabling her, and he enjoys as much being enabled by her because he feels valuable by doing this, you see. There is a problem now with his marriage because of this. You can understand, he's doing this instead of being in a relationship. So that's an example of layering lies, and it gets very complicated. I'm oversimplifying, but I think you're probably able to see what I'm saying and inside.
Yeah, and because when we work with someone or we work on ourselves, that's part of the process for us. We're peeling off those layers of lies that we've been telling ourselves for years and years and years to get to the deeper truth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Celine's just written, excuse me for interrupting, I'd like to address this.
Yeah.
And she's saying, when she really related to Christina's story about not wanting to go out. But you said something intriguing, which is crowds drain me. Mm-hmm. I think we ought to address here something important, which is the energy of the extrovert and the introvert. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, I always stand in front of crowds and I say, "You think I'm an introvert or an extrovert?" And everybody says, "Oh man, you are such an extrovert." Right? I'm not. I'm the biggest introvert you know.
Yeah.
Because what science has now found is those kind of are erroneous statements about yourself. The extrovert, though, is someone who gets energy from people, and the introvert gets energy from being alone. And think of it as a sliding scale. Mm-hmm. I'm probably a 0 in the introvert. Other people, I think, have it very hard, and this may be you, Celine, because if you're on a scale, say, from 1 to 10, extrovert being a 10, introvert being a 0, you are maybe a 3 for introvertism, and perhaps you are not being sensitive to yourself to know that you need not to go out right now. You see, one of the reasons I look like an extrovert and do a lot of public speaking and do this and do everything else is because my alone time is very alone. That's where I renew. We either get energy from being alone or from crowds. You obviously do not get energy from crowds. I despise crowds. I will avoid them unless I am working them and working for them. So it's something to look at and realize that your life is about that kind of balance. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make sure you get what you need. And that requires you being sensitive to yourself. Just wanted to address that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was looking at that too, and I think it is important for us to address. And, balance is such an important key word here because you may be an introvert like both of us are. I do that too. I have my alone time, and I know I need that to recharge my battery. But you also need to be sensitive to when your fear is stepping in and keeping you from doing something.
Good point.
You might not want to go to the Georgia Dome and hang out with thousands and thousands of people.
That's right.
But maybe a dinner party of 5 or 6 would be a nice interaction for you to keep from isolating, because we don't want you to go into isolation out of fear and not have this beautiful, wonderful life.
That's right.
So look at those kind of subtle things like, okay, I don't want to go to a huge concert, but maybe hanging out with a few friends is something that would be enjoyable.
Absolutely. And what Christina is absolutely saying is that you've got to know your motivation for doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. That requires certain sensitivity and, by the way, emotional honesty with yourself. Are you going to your room when you live with other people because you're isolating and withdrawing, or are you going to your room to renew?
Yeah, okay, and so now she's saying, I prefer to be alone. I work in retail and come home exhausted. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that I work where I'm interacting with a lot of people all day long, and I often make the joke, I've got a word quota. I've used my words quota by 5 o'clock,
There's nothing else to say.
Yeah, I've got so I go home and I take the time to be silent and quiet. I often will not make phone calls, if I've had a very busy day or get on the computer or have any kind of input. I, have a nice quiet evening, and that recharges me. But, on the weekends, I feel like I need to get out and engage with the world, unless something's going on that I need to work through personally. Mm-hmm. It's important not to isolate completely.
I think so, too. And I'll give you a tip so you won't be so drained at the end of the day, because I think you do this. Yeah. And that is, darling, no one says we have to jump when somebody says jump. Mm-hmm. We can actually build in little times. I think it's real important to make people feel safe. I always use this example, and that is, when you go to the bathroom, let down. Yeah. When you are away from people because you say you work in retail, let down. Yeah. Don't even be there. Just sit there in your cubicle and let down. And be within you and be still. Be quiet and connect with that inner. And then in a few minutes, when you're out of that cubicle, put on your public face and go. Because I'm not saying your public face is false. That's not what I'm saying.
Right, absolutely.
I am saying that we have to do everything. There was a test a long time ago about inside and outside activities, and they found that when you're doing an inside activity like reading, writing, thinking, meditating, that kind of stuff, it takes 3 days for you to do an outside activity really well. My life doesn't work that way. I have to do inside activity and outside activities all day long. And so do you. Yeah. And so does Christina. And so does everybody. So we have got to realize that there is a balance that we have to achieve in these little moments throughout the day. in the bathroom, in the, going to the back room, doing whatever we're doing in retail, really will give us more energy at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you pointed that out because that's something I do unconsciously. It was actually you introduced me to it first as an actor, because as an actor, you need to conserve your energy when you're on the stage or in front of the camera. You got to bring that energy up and be there and be present. But when you're off stage, you might want to just take a moment.
Absolutely.
So that you can get through the whole performance, the whole show, whatever. And I do that at work. We have someone come in, my energy's up, I'm present, I'm connected with them, and then when I'm waiting the next 20 minutes for the next person to come in, I'm bringing it down and I'm taking that time to conserve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always, I know this, I'm off the subject, but when I do seminars, and particularly when I do seminars for out-of-town businesses, I'm working day and night, as you can imagine. But I always make sure that I take my lunch and dinner breaks, unless there is a big function or something, alone. But I say alone, the truth is just not with other people. I may have someone like Christina with me, or Christina herself. I can remember something that happened a while back. We went to lunch. I went to lunch alone. And I pulled my energy in and quiet and was really renewing. I couldn't get a waiter to even see me.
Invisible.
I became absolutely invisible because energy makes us visible or invisible, right? And I had pulled my energy down because I wanted to renew. So after that, I always took someone with me who would go, waiter, and could put their energy up so we could get served. Okay, that's off the subject. Let's go back.
No, I'm glad she wrote this in because I actually meant to say this at the beginning of the show. If you guys have questions or you need more of an explanation of anything we're saying, please type it in or call in. Because in class we find that leads to the most fascinating discussions and learning when someone goes, wait a minute, I need a real world example of this, or wait a minute, I need more of an explanation of this.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we get to going and we don't realize what we're saying isn't coming across clearly.
Absolutely.
So
Lisa's just written in, and she says she has a lot more energy now that she's home, and you have a good social circle, and you find more joy in being social now. That's wonderful, sweetheart. The whole idea, though, some of us can't stay home, and we've got to find the balance in our lives.
You have to find the things that feed you, and
absolutely
nourish you, and rebuild you.
Sometimes the irony here is that we have to expend energy to get energy, really. It's real interesting. But we've got to find out who we are at our natures.
Yes.
And then honor that in some behavioral way.
Yeah, because the extrovert's going to live a very different life. I actually know this couple, and the husband is more of an introvert, and the wife is more an extrovert. And at the end of the work week on Friday night, she wants to go out to a restaurant where it's busy and lively and meet people and have a great meal. And he's like, I want to go home. So you have to find these balances and know yourself well enough to know what's going to work for you and what isn't going to work for you.
That's right. And I think this is a really good example of coming out of the ego child's mind, because the ego child's mind might say, we have to be together all the time.
Yes.
For every activity, just like, couples, and there's a reason that fairy tales only say, and they lived happily ever after, because they're not working out their problems. They don't know how to do it.
Yeah, they don't know how to write that story.
They don't know how to write that story.
Complicated.
You're writing that story. We're writing that story individually.
Yeah, I think one of the most lovely things I ever heard you say about Michael, and I'm paraphrasing, so I might not get it quite right, but you said he was the man that you found you could be alone with.
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautiful.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's very true, He honors my aloneness. I honor his aloneness, even if we're together. It's wonderful. And our need for whatever we both support, I think it's great. Well, let's come on with your next one. We are so off the subject, but we're having fun.
It's okay.
All right.
Okay, so children, you hear the terrible twos, and children have temper tantrums, and they fall on the floor crying and screaming, making a scene. And I think a lot of people have seen this kid in the grocery store that their poor parent is just trying to buy the weekly groceries, and the kid is like losing it because they want gummy bears or something. This actually happened to my sister with my dear nephew, who is now a grown man and married and lovely.
And embarrassed to say about what you're going to
So
say.
I'm going to tell an embarrassing story about him. He was very young, and he was sitting in the grocery cart, and they were going through the store, and he was never really one to make a scene. He was a very quiet, well-behaved child. So he is like crying in the grocery store and just, I want it, you know, and this man is coming the other direction, and he looks at my sister, and he shakes his head in sympathy. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. We've all been there. You know, we've all had to tell our children they can't have that sugary cereal, or they can't have that candy, you know. And my sister goes, well, actually he's crying because he wants the spinach.
That's hilarious.
He didn't want the fresh spinach she bought. He wanted the spinach that was in the can that had the Popeye on the can.
Oh, he wanted Popeye.
Pie.
Yes.
So he was freaking out about that, and the man was like, yeah, I don't even know what to say about that one.
That's funny. That's really funny.
So of course Philip was crying over spinach and not candy.
That is one unusual kid.
Yes, he's fantastic. But as an adult, you know, this can show up in our lives as being histrionic or defiance or something like that. You know, say you are in a disagreement.
We're talking about the rage and not the spinach, by the way.
Yeah, spinach. Yes.
Forget spinach.
You can
it's
like
off the table.
You can buy it or not buy it. It's not an issue, we promise you. Unless you're afraid of spinach, then maybe we should talk about it. So yes, the rage and having the temper tantrum might not be so overt as an adult. Like as an adult, you're not going to lay down on the floor and shake and cry and have your fist clenched, and you may, but it's not common. We learn ways to mask it and make it seem more reasonable and justified. I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking to be justified in our
validated
in our egoic child reaction. So as an adult, it may look like something you're having a disagreement with your partner or someone, and instead of seeing the conversation through, you storm out in anger. Or perhaps you do it more of an internal process where you're not getting what you want from them, so you shut down and get cold and withdraw.
Yeah.
You know, your love. And I'm going to give you the cold shoulder, for now. And so that's the same thing. It's still a temper tantrum. It's just masked in a more adult way.
Yeah, adults want to look good.
Yeah.
So we have a tendency to do that. There are some, first of all, I want you to understand there are reasons, if you have anger issues, there are reasons why you're angry.
Yeah.
And this may surprise you to learn, but 10% of it is in the present. 90% of it is in the past. So we have to look at the past. You may be trying to blame someone currently, but the solution to the anger and to the problem lies in the past and the original person that upset you. We have to go back to the childhood to see who did what to whom. And then we drop that into a larger context, which is what the adult mind, the mind that is more enlightened and merging with the mind of God sees. It sees the whole. That's something that's dropped into the whole. It is not the whole. But you see, when we focus on issues, when we focus on who we're angry at, it becomes our whole world, doesn't it? We may sweep it under the rug, and this is the problem with relationships, because if they're not willing to work on themselves and see what their issues are, and their tendency is to sweep their feelings under the rug, in 20 years you're going to have a big pile under the rug, and not one thing can be named.
Yeah.
You can't call it by name. It's just a big, angry pile.
Mm-hmm.
So, at that point, you either have to do consciousness work and realize the past is in the past and you're going to deal with the problems currently that reflect the past, and forget everything that's happened before now, or you divorce, or you live that way without people speaking to each other. It's a shame. The ideal way of doing this, I think, is to address problems as they come up.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's the problem. A lot of people are not sensitive to the fact that they're being bothered by something,
Mm-hmm.
that something's triggering them and reminding them of an unresolved issue in the past.
Yeah.
So what they do is ignore it, and they just kind of collect these things, and then there's a big explosion because they've collected these things and they have not individually been addressed. So what if now we become more sensitive to ourselves and we say, this is bothering me. Christina, I'm going back to something. I'm just making an example here. I'm going back to something that you said. I'm trying to do this with it. I don't think at all you meant that. What did you mean? And then she could explain herself, and it's not at all of the past anymore, you see?
Yeah, because, as we're saying with the egoic child's mind, it makes it all about me. Mm-hmm. And so we could have had a conversation. I could have said something that was completely innocuous to me, and then you heard it a different way because you made it about you.
Exactly.
Whereas I was like over here,
What about me at all?
Yeah, and we have to get those things clear. We have to be very clear in our conversations with our friends and our partners and our spouses, so that these things don't get messy and that pile doesn't get built up under the rug.
That's right.
Be very clean in this. Go, I'm not quite sure I got that. What Martha's saying, and clarify it, because you will be surprised at how many times
it's not about you.
It's not about you. It really isn't.
That's right. I also will put on the table that we argue about two things. These are universal issues.
Yeah.
You don't care about me. When we feel uncared about, we're going to get depressed, which is just suppressed rage, or we will be enraged. And the second issue is I'll never get what I want. Every human being walking the planet is motivated by these two issues. This is what you argue about in every relationship. Yeah. You don't care about me, I'll never get what I want. So what happens when we get over those issues? When we care about ourselves and we make sure that we're creating and we get what we want. You don't argue anymore.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be angry about. There's just stuff to be worked out if I misunderstand Christina or she misunderstands me.
Absolutely.
You see?
And in my experience, when I've done this with people, it really deepens the bond with the person. It deepens the love that you have for each other. Martha's often calls these things pockets of unlovingness. It's like once you clear the air and you clear what that is, that then transforms into love.
That is.
And that's a beautiful thing, and it's the way relationships deepen and grow.
That's right. Rage is just love that can't be itself for an issue. And then you release it. And this is how couples deepen through the years. You know? When they find these pockets of unlovingness and release them back into love, that's how you deepen and grow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It doesn't come from ignoring it or pretending it's not happening. That's, as you were saying earlier, we ignore our feelings because we're afraid of them and we're afraid they're going to last forever. Mm-hmm. So, when you're in this disagreement with your spouse, what's triggering in you, as she said, is an old thing, some fear, I'm going to be abandoned, so let me lash out, let me get, defensive, let me have a tantrum here, let me do any of these things we're talking about, rather than going in and go, you know what, I'm really scared right now. I'm really feeling some pain right now.
Yeah.
And, that honesty with the right partner, with the right friend, is going to go a long way, because they're probably feeling something very, very similar. And you can sit down and have a real conversation, a vulnerable conversation, and get to a place you've never been to before with them.
It's marvelous when people do that.
Yeah.
But, I think, and this is a generality. This is not everybody, so please don't react to this. But I honestly think that men have a problem sometimes with this, because they have had years of training, and it's in their DNA. They got to go out and kill the wild wildebeest, right?
Right.
And so when you say, darling, are you afraid? They often say, I'm not afraid.
Yes.
Well, that's a lie. Because there are only two emotions, and everything fits under these two categories, and that is fear and love. Mm-hmm. That's all you got. So you got to acknowledge that this is fear-based to really get it.
Yeah.
And to, as you say, be vulnerable and trust the other and say, I trust you that you're not going to hurt me when I tell you that I'm afraid about something.
Yeah.
And I think that really is true love when you do that.
I do too. Melody made a comment. I can't read it. My contacts are blurry.
Christina has helped me over the years realize it isn't about the cap being off the toothpaste.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, because you hear couples all the time argue about you left the cap off again. The toothpaste is all over the counter, or you put the toilet paper roll on backwards.
Yeah.
It's never about that. It's
never
always
about
about a bigger thing that you've ignored along the way, or
it's always about you don't care about me.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You don't put the cap on the toothpaste. You don't care about me. You leave the toilet seat up. You don't care about me. You know. You don't take the lock off the bathroom door when there are two entrances. You don't care about me. Now, that's what I'm guilty of. So,
that's right. Because in the cabin,
that's right. In the cabin,
doors.
we have the two doors. So it's like, oh, come on. You know? So you have to realize that love is a privilege, and you must not forget that love is a privilege.
Absolutely.
You know, I also say to this that life is really about improvisation. We assume. You see, the problem is we have an assumption, and we layer it with the if you care about me, you're going to put the cap on the toothpaste.
Yes.
And the truth is, it's left off sometimes. The truth is, you know, the bathroom doesn't get unlocked in this way. What does it mean? Well, it certainly does not mean you don't care about me.
Yeah.
And the fact of our assumption, our expectation, is setting us up to be disappointed and angry and to feel uncared about, when the truth is, let's just strip off the fact that it's nothing but the cap is left off the toothpaste, the door is locked, go around.
Right.
For God's sake. It's just, it's not a metaphor for something.
Yeah, you know, and that's what we're trying to get you to see is that's when you're being the child. The child rushes in and goes, oh, here's some more evidence. We are not loved. And it's trying to build a case for that, you know, because the egoic child's mind doesn't really care if we're happy or not. It just wants to keep you safe and keep you surviving. So it looks for things, scans everything, looking for evidence so that you can protect yourself at all times.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's its job, and we appreciate that. It got us through childhood, but now don't need it.
That's right. Yeah, it's in the way, and it's certainly in the way of good relationships with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? I think that giving the benefit of the doubt to people is that they really are loving. They just had a moment of unconsciousness. It's one of the nicest things you can do for people.
Yeah.
Really. I do. Darling, you had some marvelous lists this next page.
Okay. Just things to kind of look for.
Yeah, things to look for in the child's mind. I think this is honestly a really good thing that she made a list of things that I saw last night, and I thought, wow, she doesn't need me. So I'm going to sit back here and let her tell you this list.
Well, I'm trying to make this as easy as for everyone to absorb. You know, things you can really look for in yourself and your own life. And as we're becoming more aware, we often see these things very quickly in other people. We want you to take that next step. You know, great, see it in someone else, but take that next step and see it in yourself and see how you're using it. As we've been giving these examples all day, you may be seen yourself or someone you know in it. So, you know, just take these as a learning. So the child uses specific language, absolutes, like always, never. You're always late, or you
always leave the cap off the toothpaste. Yeah.
You never think about me when you do blah, blah, blah.
That's
right.
Know,
those extremes, those absolutes, that is a child talking.
And that's a lie, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because the cap is on the toothpaste sometimes.
Sometimes it is, yes. When you first bought it, the cap was on the toothpaste, so there you go. You can't use that argument.
There you go.
And other words like... that's unfair, or that's not fair. You know, that you can hear the child in that, a little kid going, well, that's just not fair. You know, I worked so hard. It's not fair I didn't get that promotion. You know, that's the child's approach and the child's reaction, again, out of a fear, maybe a fear I've been rejected. They didn't want me.
That's right.
You know, those
They don't care about me.
Yeah, there's a whole story there to back up that word. So this is the door opening for you. The light should go off when you hear yourself saying some of these words and go, okay, what story did I just tell myself, to back up using this? Something like, I will get in trouble. Trouble to me is like a little kid kind of word. I heard someone say this a few months ago. Her husband had surgery, and he was supposed to be taking certain medications post-surgery. And she was always having to remind him, you need to take this, you need to take this. And one day I heard her say, you better take your medicine or we're going to get in trouble.
Oh, I love that.
So, like her thought was, we're going to get in trouble with the doctor, rather than the adult going, okay, taking the medication is the right thing to do. It's what my body needs. Sure. Let me take the medication. It came from a very child place instead of the adult.
I love that.
Honoring their body and what they needed. And the child always sees the small picture. Lives in the small picture. It's all about me. It's about the small picture. And the adult sees the big picture, the big possibilities, because the adult mind has the ability to process complex information and problem solve, whereas the child didn't.
And that's a problem, because a lot of times we are marked in our childhood, especially if something was demanded of us that we really shouldn't have been able to do, but was demanded of us anyway, and we failed. Man, that's an issue. We think that we have failed. I love that.
Yeah.
Celine said, I went from it's not fair to it's just not meant to be. That's lovely. That's
exactly
true.
Yeah.
It's a door that shuts, so go around. Go through another one.
Yeah.
Or in my case, absolutely, you have to go walk around.
You literally have to walk around and go through the other bathroom door.
Go through the other door. Don't think the metaphor escapes me. It does not. But to what you were saying, I've now forgotten what I was saying.
It was brilliant.
Right. What were you saying? You were just saying.
I was talking about the small picture and the complex thinking.
That's right.
The adult.
I often think of this as when we have not brought our minds forward, when we're still stuck in the past. It is still all about us. It is still narrow and limiting. We're not seeing everything in a larger context. I always use this image. I'll say, draw a great big old circle on whatever page you've got. And of course, we know there is no real circle, that you are limitless. Sorry.
Third
now, I'm having a hard time talking this morning. Not a second cup of tea. That's the problem. And then in the circle, put a dot. Just a little dot. That's the ego child's mind in this vastness.
Yeah.
But as Christina is about to tell you, that's the part that you sometimes let drive the bus.
Yeah.
And kids shouldn't drive the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these examples we're giving you and things we're trying to get you to see that you're doing is the closed system. We've talked about this before. It's very narrow, it's very closed, but when you switch over into the adult, you suddenly become the open system, which opens you to possibilities, opens you to opportunities, opens you to choices
and there's a lot of interaction with your environment.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do that if your child's belief is that everything does not work for my good. I'm going to get screwed.
Yeah.
And that's a real good reason to close the gate.
Yeah.
I think. But we've got to now challenge that belief, because everything does work for your good. Just like Celine said, she went from it's not fair to it's just not meant to be. Let's go in a different direction.
Yeah, and that's a great example of what we're talking about here. It's not fair closes her down to anything else happening. She's staying in that stuck place of that hurt, wounded child, and then she switched to the energy of it's just not meant to be.
Yeah, let's go somewhere else.
That's full of possibilities right there.
Right. That's absolutely right.
Okay, and so another thing the child does is likes to label things. Things are very black and white, right or wrong, good or bad. The child likes labels because it's about safety and control. Like, if I can label this as bad, then, I can avoid that, or I can blame that, and I can be the victim, or, whatever the scenario is, it's about trying to compartmentalize and understand their universe in a way that's very simplistic.
Yep.
Because as we're saying, the brain wasn't fully developed. They weren't capable of complex thought and thinking about complex emotions. The dad has had a bad day at work and is angry when he gets home. Becomes very simplistic. It's about me. I've done something wrong. I need to be a better child. It becomes very black and white because the child's not able to go, well, Dad was at work today and maybe something happened there. Maybe a scenario there that I'm not aware of put him in this mood. It becomes very, very simplified.
Yeah, I often use the example of, let's say that you are a budding writer when you're 6, and you write poems or you write whatever, in these formative stages. And your dad just never has time to listen, or if he does listen, he's distracted. What happens is we think, gosh, we're not good. We aren't good. Mm-hmm. And we'll grow up either overcompensating for that so that everything is a tremendous effort because you're reacting to the belief that I'm no good. Mm-hmm. My dad said I was no good. Or you live some sort of life that isn't up to your potential because you really have imploded in, I'm not good.
Yeah.
And then we have forgotten the original source, you see, that explains that and why we're doing that. We've forgotten that story. And then it becomes, well, my gosh, I don't know how to get out of this. This is where energy work comes in because we can hopefully, if you allow us, find those sources and we'll free you from that. That's what any great energy worker does. We're trying to find those things that you've forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely, because the child in you is repeating these patterns, repeating these relationships in new people. Your boss at work might be your dad. Your friend might be your mother. You're trying to have the same relationship but get a different result. You're trying to get the result that your child wanted to feel satisfied and fulfilled and loved. Mm-hmm. But we can't do that. You can't do that in another person, and you draw these circumstances to you over and over. Or, we're often misreading the circumstances.
Right.
Say you've got a critical parent and you've grown up with this constant criticism of the way you do things, and then you grow up as an adult and you get a job, and your boss very kindly tries to point out, we need to do it this way, not the way you did it. Mm-hmm. And you have a very strong reaction to that. You start crying at work, or you get angry and defensive, or, any of these things we're talking about. That's not about your boss trying to help you be a better employee. That's about you going back to, my dad criticized me, I was not loved.
That's absolutely right.
So those are the things that we do over and over and over that we're trying to make you aware of, and that's what a good healer will do for you, is to help you see the beginning of the pattern and lift those energies off to make it easier for you.
We're not telling you what to think. We're actually trying to drop what you did in a larger perspective so that it doesn't have the activation in your nervous system anymore. The thing is, you will always be left with the memory of what happened.
Yeah.
You won't be left with the reaction to it anymore. That's what energy work does. So you'll always have the memory, but not the reaction. When you don't have a reaction anymore, that turns to conscious choice and the fact that you have lots of options and that you will choose it consciously and deliberately and go on with your life.
Yeah, that becomes your wisdom as the adult. Mm-hmm. When you stop living and reacting as the child, then you become the adult that has that wisdom of those experiences and those circumstances. I mean, we both draw on that so much in class, with clients, in our writing, and the radio show. Everything that we've experienced as people is here to serve us and to help us.
That's right.
It gives us that knowledge base and those what we can use to help someone else. So it's a wonderful, beautiful thing when you look at it in that larger perspective.
That's absolutely right. Your wisdom becomes your contribution, and that's very much the highest self.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, let's see.
Go back to the list.
I am so sorry. I have allergy stuff, and it's making my eyes so blurry. I can't even
That's
see.
what's aggravating me as well. My voice is lower today,
Yes.
and it's because of something out there is already blooming.
I think we've hit a
Have we
lot of
already
this
hit it?
stuff. Yeah, we've kind of hit all of this in some great way. Other than saying, when we were talking about the ego at child's mind earlier, we really don't want to label it as bad. It is here to serve you. It is showing you something. What we want for you is for it to be assimilated. Not reject it, not deny it. Assimilate it as part of the greater whole. It's just not meant to be in charge. It's not meant to be the one driving the car anymore. It needs to be a passenger,
Think of the kid, the kid's driving the bus, okay?
Yeah.
Well, if the kid's driving the bus, it shouldn't. But that doesn't mean you should beat it up.
Right.
It just means you need to lovingly take the car keys away from her and say, you're part of a greater whole. Why don't you go sit in that really comfortable seat and let me drive now.
Let me take the keys.
That's right.
Yes, exactly.
And that's really all it means. I think that the bottom line to every single solitary thing we've given you an example of is you can either look at yourself, challenge, and change your behavior, or you have the opportunity to reject it all. And to say, I'm not going to learn anything. The examples that we have given you of the ego child's mind are shutting the door, closed system, as Christina said. There's no learning beyond that. It's just a behavior over and over and over again.
It's just repeating the same pattern over and over.
Living by rote, trained, sealed stuff. It goes through its act. And we are so much more than that. So we say to you, and it isn't, I don't think, just because we've done this. If I wasn't teaching this, if I wasn't what I was doing, if this wasn't what I was doing, I would still say this to you, that you have to grow past, you have to grow into your highest self. It's all energy, and everything is changeable. Your beliefs are energy. The egoic child's mind beliefs are active in the nervous system, and they are narrow and limiting, and they must be dropped into a larger context. You can't deny them. You can't reject them. You can't keep saying you're bad because you're saying the child you were. You're on the other side of the abusers if you do that.
Yeah.
And we learn as we do this that it's just not all about us. It's about us as part of something big and glorious and alive and important. And this is the energy of the highest self that's connected to everything. It's the energy of God. It's who you are. And I think, and Christina believes, that it's time for all of us to take off the disguise. And what's disguising us? These layers of crap.
Yeah.
These layers of crap. And they're puffs of air that, because we believe them as our core issues, they control our lives. Our lives are so much bigger than that.
Yeah, and I've always connected with the quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And this, to me, really speaks to that. We could sit around all day on social media or the internet and complain about the world and the state of the world and the things that are going on in it. Or you can be the change.
Yes.
And to me, this is the way you do it. You take a good, honest look at yourself, and you're willing to do the work to become more aware, more conscious, more loving, is what comes out of that. And therefore, you do change the energy of the world. You're changing yourself, and that contributes to the larger whole.
That's right. If you just feel positive about all this, there is an energy of the largest whole. And let me tell you, it's taken over the planet right now. And I constantly see, I think it was someone here that said that they yell at social like the ranting on social media.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
saying that, Melody. There is a ranting on social media. There is an argument in the world. Everybody's arguing. It is the ego child's mind in all of us that makes predictions.
Yeah.
All the pundits on television are afraid. And with every little move that anybody ever makes, they are ranting and raving and predicting disaster or success or whatever, instead of the spirituality of not knowing and of improvising,
Yeah.
and of staying true to the self and being positive about this. The bottom line is that's going on in the world is it's all necessary right now. Whatever you believe, whatever you see out there, it's all necessary. It's going someplace. I was trying to remember, because she had a great quote about the Be the Change. My husband has a quote that I bought him that's on his desk, which is, everything will be all right in the end.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not okay, it's not the end.
Yeah. That is absolutely true.
I agree, Deanne. Yeah, she says, let there be peace on earth. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and all of the stuff you see of people ranting online, all that is a huge example of the egoic child's mind.
Yeah.
If that is a bunch of children, a bunch of people reacting from their child out of fear.
Yeah.
That's all it is, and if you can see it for that, you can have compassion for it.
Yes.
Because you can look at it and go, you know what, I've gotten that in myself too, so let me work on myself. Let's put the energy in. I want to challenge you to do that. Don't put the energy into arguing with someone online. Put the energy into changing yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a better use and spendage of that energy. Invest in yourself, invest in change, instead of investing in childish arguments and things that aren't going to go anywhere.
I think that's a beautiful thing to say. The truth is, the highest self doesn't argue.
Yeah.
It doesn't argue. Okay. So, if you got some argument in you, you ought to look at that.
Yeah. So just like in the small picture of us and our little lives, the issues we have are there to take us somewhere else. They're there to show us more. So is the big picture of the world. The things that are happening are there to take us somewhere else.
That's right.
Somewhere bigger, somewhere more loving. We just have to learn to go with.
We have to learn to go with. And going with is such a spiritual principle. By the way, we don't mean that you have to go against your principles. It's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
Going with means that inside, not outside, inside, you are saying yes to all possibilities, and then you choose the ones you want.
Yeah.
That are in agreement with who you are as spirit. We are so glad that you have been with us today. We love every one of you all. Yes, and let it begin with me, Deanne
Absolutely.
says. We thank you so much for listening to the show. If you've liked the show, it means a lot to us if you would, here we are, copy and paste it to social media or whatever you have to do here. I think there is something on your screen on Blog Talk Radio that says you can post it to other media sites. Isn't that true?
I believe so, yes.
I don't know whether it is actually true, but I think so. But you can post our link to other radio show, to other sites, and you can ask them to go to blogtalkradio.com, my name, Martha Burgess Novak, and you can hear Christina and me in a lot of these radio shows talking about a variety of things. Sometimes it's just me, but it's a lot of fun when it's Christina. So we want to put this on the table for you, that this would be a marvelous opportunity for you to get this around. We also love study groups. So if you want to form study groups around some of this teaching, we think that's great. And we are available to talk to your study group.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the phone, in person, whatever you want to do. So I think it's more important than ever to support our beliefs instead of our issues, and seek not validation for the lower forms, but challenge us to believe something else and live that way. All right, let's do a quick prayer and close this out. We'll be here next week. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we sure do thank you for today. We thank you for all these dear people who have written in. It means the world to us. We ask now for healing, that any issue that we have brought up that belongs to someone else, that's lifted off of them, that they be willing to let that go. This is not some great mystic exercise. It is the truth that when we truthfully say to you from inside, we surrender this, dear God, transform us, that it is surrendered to us in our highest self, that it may change from whatever the issue is into love in the present moment. This is our spiritual right, our spiritual journey. We thank you so much for it. It's happening now, if we will allow that to be so. We thank you so much, dear God, for all the blessings of consciousness and for the teachings and for what we do in the day-to-day that we are made aware of. We ask that we'll be even more aware tomorrow of what we're doing and which mind we're in and the facility to go from one to the other. That would be wonderful. We thank you for this. We now clear, release, and cancel all issues, blocks, needs to hold on to these things, vestiges and related issues, identities, over-identities, sympathies, over-sympathies, definitions of self and roles we play that we no longer need because they all came from the ego child's mind. We thank you and claim these issues as independent and part of our life pattern system and defense system. And we surrender these things that they may all turn into love, because that's who we really are, beyond the disguise. We surrender as much of that disguise as we are capable of surrendering today. And we thank you so much for all of this. We align the conscious and subconscious minds in complete agreement and alignment. We ask for 100% integration and communication, all chakras in between them, bodies in between them, organs, glands, and systems in between them. We seal all miasms. And we say, thank you, dear God, for all of us, for the way the system works, and for us belonging to this glorious system. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. We say this prayer, by the way, in everybody's name who's listening to the show today. Thank you so much for listening. If you will like us or follow us or do whatever, you probably can address this better than I. No. Like us, follow us, whatever is on social media that you can do to get the word around about the show. We sure would appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening. We'll be here next week. Bless you. Thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.